The ill health and death of Queen Anne Stuart. Anne endured persistent health challenges throughout her lifetime, with her health deteriorating notably from her 30s onwards, leading to obesity. Despite experiencing 17 pregnancies, she tragically passed away without any surviving children, marking the end of the House of Stuart's reign with her as its final monarch. Queen Anne's reign was marked by a series of health struggles that ultimately contributed to her untimely demise. Afflicted by recurring bouts of gout, she found herself crippled and reliant on mobility aids such as wheelchairs and a type of enclosed chair with poles that allow it to be carried by 2 or more bearers. Despite her efforts to maintain a semblance of activity, her inactive lifestyle led to a noticeable weight gain, further exacerbating her health concerns. In her later years, Anne's physical deterioration became increasingly pronounced, with her appearance reflecting the toll of her ailments. Tragically, her battle with illness culminated in her passing on the 1st of August 1714, leaving behind a legacy marred by the relentless torment of poor health. Anne's last pregnancy concluded tragically on the 25th of January 1700, resulting in a stillbirth. Throughout her life, she endured the sorrow of pregnancy loss and stillbirth, having been pregnant at least 17 times, spanning over a decade, and suffering over 10 miscarriages or stillborn births. Beginning around 1698, Anne grappled with recurrent episodes of gout, characterized by agonizing pains in her limbs that eventually spread to her stomach and head. Given her history of fetal loss and the manifestation of various physical symptoms, medical experts speculate that Anne might have been afflicted with systematic lupus or antiphospholipid syndrome. Alternatively, pelvic inflammatory disease could provide a plausible explanation for the onset of her symptoms, particularly as they coincided with her penultimate pregnancy. Various other factors have been proposed as potential causes of Anne's pregnancy failures, including listeriosis, diabetes, intrauterine growth retardation, and rhesus incompatibility. However, rhesus incompatibility seems less likely, as it typically worsens with subsequent pregnancies, whereas Anne's only surviving son, Prince William, Duke of Gloucester, was born after a series of stillbirths. Syphilis, porphyria, and pelvic deformity have also been considered, but are deemed improbable by experts due to inconsistencies with Anne's medical history and symptoms. Anne also battled with gout, and her battles plagued her throughout her later years, leaving her crippled for extended periods of time. Within the confines of the court, she relied on a chair with 2 poles carried by 2 or more bearers for transportation, or resorted to using a wheelchair to move around. Outside the court on her vast estates, she opted for a 1-horse chassis, which she handled with surprising vigour. The inactive lifestyle enforced by her condition took its toll on Anne's physical appearance, causing her to gain weight significantly. Sarah, Duchess of Marlborough, remarked on Anne's transformation, noting that while there remained a semblance of majesty in her appearance, it was overshadowed by a profound sense of gloominess. Sir John Clarke, 1st Baronet, provided a candid depiction of Anne's condition during a visit in 1706. He described her enduring a bout of gout, writhing in extreme pain and agony. His account painted a stark picture of the Queen, with her face bearing redness and spots, accentuated by her dishevelled attire. The affected foot was visibly distressed, wrapped in unsightly bandages. Clarke's encounter left a deep impression, highlighting the distressing reality of Anne's suffering, which resonated deeply with him. Between January and July of 1713, Anne's physical condition deteriorated significantly. The ordeal began during the Christmas season, when she fell ill with a fever and remained unconscious for an extended period of time, sparking widespread rumours of her imminent demise. Although she managed to recover from this episode, her health took another serious turn for the worse in March of the same year. By July, Anne had begun to lose confidence in her trusted advisor, Harley. According to records, she expressed her grievances to the cabinet, citing Harley's alleged neglect of duties, incomprehensible communication, unreliability, and unprofessional conduct, including instances of arriving intoxicated. Consequently, on the 27th of July 1714, amid Parliament's summer recess, she made the decision to dismiss Harley from his position as Lord Treasurer. Despite her declining health, attributed in part to the stress of governance, Anne continued to fulfil her duties, attending late-night cabinet meetings aimed at selecting Harley's successor. However, her condition worsened to the point where she was unable to attend a third crucial meeting due to her illness. On the 30th of July 1714, the anniversary of the death of her beloved son Prince William, Anne suffered a debilitating stroke, rendering her unable to speak. In response, on the advice of the Privy Council, she delegated the duties of Lord Treasurer to Charles Talbot, the first Duke of Shrewsbury. Anne passed away on the morning of the 1st of August 1714, around 7:30 a.m. Her death brought relief to some, including her physician, who saw it as a release from a life marked by poor health and personal tragedy. She was laid to rest beside her husband and children in the Henry VII Chapel on the south aisle of Westminster Abbey on the 24th of August. The death of Sophia Dorothea. Sophia Dorothea, also known as the Duchess of Ahlden, passed away on November 13th, 1726, at the age of 60. Her final years were marked by loneliness and declining health, leading to her death from liver failure caused by gallstones. Her death was announced without ceremony, and despite her royal connections, her burial was delayed and conducted in secret. Sophia Dorothea was born on the 15th of September 1666 and she died in 1726. She was married off to her first cousin George, who would later become King George I of Great Britain. Their marriage, which was set up by her father, his father and his mother, didn't end very well. Sophia Dorothea is famously known for her supposed romantic relationship with Count Philip Christoph, which eventually led to her being locked up in the castle of Ahlden for the last 30 years of her life. George blamed Sophia for abandoning their marriage and demanded a divorce. He had her arrested and kept in a castle during the divorce. On the 28th of December 1694, their marriage was officially ended, and Sophia Dorothea was blamed for leaving her husband. She lost all of her titles and privileges. She was not allowed to remarry or see her children, and she was not even mentioned in church prayers. After their divorce, George sent her to live in Ahlden House, which was more like a prison, despite being a large and fancy home. Her ex-husband took control of her property and gave her a yearly allowance for her living expenses. Initially, she got 8,000 thrallers, but this later increased to 28,000. Paid for by both George and her father. She lived in a secure part of the castle, constantly watched by guards. Although her mother could visit her freely, her mail and other visits were heavily monitored. Sophia Dorothea never tried to escape. At first, she could only walk in the courtyard by herself, but later on, she was allowed to walk in the garden with guards, and after 2 years, she could go on short, supervised outings. Sometimes she was moved to other castles due to wars or renovations. Her staff included loyal servants such as 2 ladies-in-waiting, several chambermaids, and kitchen staff. After being locked away, Sophia Dorothea was called the Duchess of Ahlden, and initially she was very passive and accepted her situation. However, as time passed, she tried to get her freedom back. In 1698, after her former father-in-law passed away, she sent a heartfelt letter to her ex-husband, expressing her daily prayers for him and pleading for forgiveness and a chance to see their children again. She also wrote to her former mother-in-law, wishing for a chance to meet her one last time. Sadly, neither responded to her appeals. In 1705, her father wanted to see her one final time on his deathbed. However, his advisor objected, fearing it might upset diplomatic relationships with Hanover. Her father died without them reconciling. During her time in prison, Sophia Dorothea showed her generosity by donating a large amount of money to rebuild the town of Auden after a severe fire in 1715. Her mother's death in 1722 left her completely alone. When her daughter, now the Queen of Prussia, visited Hanover in 1725, Sophia Dorothea dressed carefully and waited by the window every day, hoping to see her daughter, but she never did. Sophia's later years were marred by health problems. She became significantly overweight, and her well-being was frequently undermined by febrile colds that left her shivering and miserable, along with persistent indigestion that made meals a source of discomfort rather than pleasure. Her physical ailments continued to worsen, culminating in early 1726 when she suffered a debilitating stroke. This marked the beginning of a steep decline in her health. By August of that year, Sophia's condition deteriorated further. She was struck by a severe bout of colic, a painful abdominal condition that confined her to her bed. Griped by intense pain, she became increasingly despondent and refused all forms of food and medical treatment. Her refusal to eat or seek help suggested a deep resignation to her fate, perhaps hastened by the cumulative toll of her illnesses and the isolation that she felt in her later years. Her life came to a quiet end just before midnight on the 13th of November, 1726, at the age of 60. Following her death, an autopsy was performed, which revealed the extent of her internal afflictions. The doctors discovered that she had succumbed to liver failure. Additionally, her gallbladder was obstructed, a condition compounded by the presence of 60 gallstones, a staggering number that underscored the severe underlying medical issues that she'd faced. Sophia Dorothea's death was noted with minimal fanfare. Her former husband, from whom she had been estranged for many years, placed a brief announcement in the London Gazette stating that the Duchess of Auden had passed away. Notably, he expressly forbade any public displays of mourning in both London and Hanover, reflecting the continued estrangement and possibly unresolved bitterness between them. His disdain for any form of mourning was further evidenced by his reaction to the news that members of his daughter's court in Berlin had donned black attire in mourning. Reports indicate that he was incensed upon hearing this, although his reasons remain rooted in the complexities of their personal and political histories. In the immediate aftermath of her death, the guards of Auden were tasked with handling her remains. They placed her body in a lead coffin and temporarily stored it in a cellar, a stark and somewhat unbefitting resting place for a woman of her station. The initial plan was for a quiet interment in the local cemetery of Auden. However, this plan was thwarted by weeks of relentless heavy rain that rendered the cemetery inaccessible. As a result, her coffin was returned to the cellar and hastily covered with sand, a provisional measure that underscored the somewhat chaotic and undignified handling of her burial. It was not until May 1727, several months after her death, that conditions finally allowed for Sophia to be buried. The delayed burial took place without any ceremony, quietly, and without mourning typically afforded to individuals of her rank. The austere and almost forgotten conclusion to her life stands in stark contrast to the complexities and intrigues that had marked her earlier years as a consort caught in the turbulent cross-currents of European nobility. Her final resting place, devoid of pomp or significant recognition, perhaps epitomizes the isolation and neglect that she experienced in her final years, far removed from the power and influence that she once defied her life. A heartbreaking tale of Queen Caroline, unraveling the tragic threads of a queen's life and ultimately her demise. In the big storybook of history, some stories make us smile, some bring tears, and others leave us lost in thought. The story of Queen Caroline, who stood by King George II, is one of those tales that touch the heart deeply. Her life journey, marked by struggles and ending in a terrible tragedy in 1737, is a story we need to explore. Join us as we unfold the layers of Queen Caroline's life, her battle with health, and the sad event that led to her untimely end. Picture this: Queen Caroline, the partner of King George II, played a big role during his time as king from 1727 to 1760. Even though her time as queen was cut short, her smart mind and strong character won the trust of scholars and the king. King George II even made her regent, showing just how much he trusted her to run the kingdom. Now let's embark on an in-depth exploration of Queen Caroline's health, a profound journey marked by the joys of indulgence and the agonies of physical ailments. Her love for food, a seemingly innocent pleasure, took a toll on her well-being, casting a shadow over her life. Queen Caroline's fondness for the gastronomic delights was well known, and her expanding waistline attested to this love affair with food. Indulging in rich feasts, she embraced the pleasures of the table, not realizing that this culinary delight would unleash a silent adversary, gout. The painful condition attacked her joints, making every moment a challenge, as if the very act of walking was accompanied by a symphony of pain. Yet the trials of Queen Caroline's health didn't stop there. The tale took a heartbreaking turn with her journey through motherhood. 10 pregnancies and 8 childbirths left an undeniable mark on her body, resulting in the emergence of an umbilical hernia. This wasn't merely a physical burden, it became a source of deep embarrassment for the Queen. The hernia made her appearance, casting a shadow over her regal countenance. In response to the physical and emotional pain, she resorted to concealing this blemish beneath specially tailored garments, weaving a narrative of hidden struggles beneath the veneer of royalty. As the sands of time moved forward, Queen Caroline faced a fateful night in 1737, a night that would etch itself into the pages of tragic history. Attending a party, she was compelled to cut short her enjoyment due to excruciating pain in her belly. The ambience of merriment quickly transformed into a scene of distress. Summoning the best physicians available, Caroline's room became a stage for desperate medical interventions. Bleeding, purging, and a daring operation unfolded, the latter conducted without the solace of sleep medicine. Tragically, the very hands that were meant to heal her committed a risky act, sealing her fate in a cruel twist of destiny. The progression of Caroline's health took a perilous turn, pushing the medical practitioners to explore unconventional measures in a desperate bid to save the Queen. Ignoring established medical wisdom, the doctors, in a daring move, decided to cut a portion of her ailing bowel. The weight of uncertainty hung in the air, yet Queen Caroline, even in the absence of medical aid, clung to her spirit. In the midst of this medical maze, the Queen displayed resilience that bordered on the extraordinary. She exchanged jokes with her attending physician, Dr. Ramby, a gallows humour that testified to her indomitable spirit. However, even the strength of her will couldn't shield her from the gravity of the unfolding tragedy. Despite the facade of humour, Caroline's pain intensified. The ability to ingest even the simplest substance eluded her, and as days turned into weeks, the inevitable transpired. The strained bowels ruptured, causing a burst that heralded 3 long days of unrelenting agony. Finally, on the sombre date of the 20th of November, 1737, Queen Caroline departed this world within the confines of St. James's Palace, London, with her husband, King George II, standing vigil at her bedside. As the curtains closed on this poignant chapter, the tale of Queen Caroline's health emerged as a tapestry woven with threads of indulgence, affliction, and an unyielding spirit that flickered until the last breath. The pages of history bore witness to a queen who faced a multitude of physical trials, each chapter etched with the language of sorrow. Caroline's funeral, held at Westminster Abbey on the 17th of December 1737, was a sad day in royal history. King George II asked Handel to create music for her, called The Ways of Zion de Morn. At her funeral, special seats were set up for important people to watch, something that hadn't happened before. In a touching move, King George II planned for matching coffins with removable sides. He wanted to rest next to his beloved Queen. The sad end of Queen Caroline left a big mark in history, not just for the mistakes in her treatment, but also for changing how royal funerals were done. Her memory lives on, showing how smartness, strength, and life's fragility mix even in the grand world of royalty. Queen Caroline's story unfolds like a powerful chapter in the big book of history, showing us that even queens face tough times. Her cleverness, strength, and courage during her struggles make her a very special figure from the past. As we dig into her story, we get a closer look at the queen who left her mark on history, leaving us with a tale woven in the threads of sadness, complexity, and the strength of the human spirit.